Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it is another video in my 2024 offseason prediction series. We're doing the Las Vegas Raiders. Make sure to hit like, comment, and subscribe, and watch all the other videos I'm doing, the predictions, and see how good I am at it. But the Raiders are kind of another team, much like Carolina, where there seems to be a trend going on with who's going to be the next head coach. And I wanted to do this series as a what I would do, but I also wanted to be as realistic as possible and kind of predictive as well. So, spoiler alert, Antonio Pierce is not going to be the one who gets the head coaching job, though if it was me, I would certainly be the one to go out and do that. I think that he is the right choice. There's talks about Harbaugh and Belichick. We'll get to who I think it's going to actually end up being. At the end of the day, we're also going to talk about who they're going to re-sign, some restructuring, a trade. So I'm actually looking at a certain player in particular that we are going to trade for. We'll get to that when we get to do some of the in-house stuff. And then just talking about their overall draft strategy, how to handle the cap and free agency. They're going, I think, to be making some big splashes in free agency. I got two really big ones in particular that I feel are going to be the ones that come up for them. Because I think that Mark Davis as an owner is ready to truly compete. And I think Kansas City underperforming. I think Denver sort of being caught in the middle of like a half a rebuild. And the Chargers not really having much of an identity. I think he kind of sees blood. It's like smells that blood in the water a bit. And I think there's a real opportunity here where they could put the right pieces in place. And it's a short jump for them to be perhaps the best team in the division. I mean, especially with Kansas City. Kansas City's really got to do some work here in the offseason to get back to being what they were. But let's get into this content, and we'll start with who the head coach is going to be. So like I said, I don't think the head coach is going to be Antonio Pierce. I think if it was, he would have gotten it already. I think it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. Outside chance it's Bill Belichick, just with the Brady connection going on in Vegas. But I think Jim Harbaugh is the best choice in terms of the building a winning franchise long term. He did it in San Francisco. He's been a great college coach. He's just a great team builder in general. He clearly knows how to set up a certain culture. He's a bit of a whiner at times, but you take what you get with him. Will this upset some of the players? I think that it might. You worry about Davante Adams a bit, but I think that Jim Harbaugh can really bring that in. I think Davante Adams is smart enough to see that you bring in a guy like Jim Harbaugh, and he's going to be somebody who has a lot of success because he is an offensive guy. So it's going to spell success for Davante Adams, especially because the quality of the coach here. I think he'd be a little concerned. I think here's the other thing. I think that Belichick doesn't get this job because I do think that Josh McDaniels is going to be attached to whatever team Belichick goes to as the offensive coordinator. I'll throw that out there as well. But Harbaugh's got some work to do in terms of continuing what Antonio Pierce did, and also living up to the expectations of that roster and that fan base, in them, again, not choosing the interim head coach who mid-season steered the ship in the right direction. Some of the offensive rankings, this is what he's really being brought in to change. You thought that Jimmy Garoppolo with Josh McDaniels was going to be a good combination. It wasn't. It just wasn't. It didn't work. Aiden O'Connell, God bless him, 4th-round pick. You're not the guy. Especially with a new coach coming in, they're going to pick their quarterback. You're not going to get picked. You'll be a good backup in the NFL, I'm sure. You didn't play terribly down the stretch. I just think for long-term success, he's not the guy. And you can see, bottom half of the league in pretty much every statistical category here, except for sacks allowed. Their offensive line did great, but my New York Giants took their offensive line coach as their own now. So they're going to have to figure out a new offensive line coach, but they do have some good talent on that offensive line, some overachieving talent. They got some impending free agents, though, that they're going to have to bring back on that offensive line, which I think they should be able to do. The key is now finding a defensive coordinator. Now, does Antonio Pierce stay on the team as the defensive coordinator? That might be an option. If Jim Harbaugh gets the job, does he ask Antonio Pierce to stay? And Pierce is getting head coaching interviews. I think that if he gets offered the Giants defensive coordinator job, I think he might be more likely to take that than the Raiders defensive coordinator job. I think coming in and being a great interim head coach and then not getting the head coaching job with the team and sort of just downgrading back to a coordinator, I feel like he might want to be in New York maybe a little bit more based on those circumstances. But we'll see how that works out. The defense was up and down. They were a tale of two different defenses depending on what week to week looked like. The pass attempts allowed, pass yards allowed, and the pass TDs allowed, they actually did quite well there. The rush defense needs to improve, but they weren't really allowing teams to get into the end zone with high frequency. They weren't great in the red zone on third down, however. Middle of the pack in sacks, needed to force more turnovers, but didn't allow a lot of points. I think with an improved offense, that defense will really come together. With Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, who they took last year, 7th overall, is going to get more opportunities now moving forward. You would assume going into his second year, and I'm sure they'll find little bits and pieces of other specialists off the edge as well to help out and look into the secondary also, continue to build that group out. So we'll start with some of their in-house things, and they have $50.7 million in cap space coming into this year, which is a tremendous amount considering the amount of movement they can have and the free agents that they have as well. I don't expect Josh Jacobs to be back. I do expect them to bring back Greg Van Roten and Jermaine Illumineur on the offensive line. I think because of the age of these players, Van Roten especially, I think is 33 years old. The fact him getting a big long-term contract just isn't in the cards for him due to his age. So I think the Raiders can get him on a 2-year, $12 million deal, $2 million bonus. Boom, 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 easy. Jermaine Illumineur, same thing. He had a good year playing the tackle position and across the offensive line. 2 years, $15 million, $2 million bonus. I think fantastic as well. Amik Robertson really came into his own. So I think getting him a 1-year, $4 million contract, $500,000 signing bonus on like a prove-it deal that, it wasn't a 1-year fluke type of thing. I think Amik Robertson would take that deal. Then we got restructures. I think Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, you can restructure their deals. Maybe even throw a little bit extra money on there, but to save immediate money, $12 million for Max Crosby, $10.5 for Devontae Adams. And you see the trade there. This is the trade I was talking about. Interior defensive lineman Jonathan Allen from the Washington Commanders. Now, I look at Jonathan Allen, and he's somebody who's been quite open about not wanting to continue to lose in Washington. Well, now Washington, I think, is further away than ever from becoming a winning team. So why not get him out of there? Now, if you're Washington, you did trade Chase Young. You traded Montez Sweat. Why not also trade Jonathan Allen? You look at some of the value that these types that Jonathan Allen is on the interior that just got traded for. Look at the Leonard Williams deal where the Giants sent him to Seattle. Got a second-round pick for him. So the Raiders giving up a second-round pick to get Jonathan Allen. That gives Washington 3 second-round picks coming up, which allows them some levity to move up and down a bit. But it gives the Raiders an immediate need on the front four. Put him in there. He's a 3-down guy. He's still good against the run, but his pass rushing ability is also great. He can go up the interior. And you need that in a division that has Patrick Mahomes, that has Justin Herbert, that a conference in general that also has Lamar Jackson, that has Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers. There's so much that you need to do to build to counteract that. And I think you can give him a 2-year extension on top of trading for him. 2-year extension, $34 million. Convert some of that initial salary that you're getting into a bonus, and you can turn that first-year cap hit into a mere $9.8 million, which is going to give you some room here in free agency to continue to add to this team. Some of the cuts I have there, Jimmy Garoppolo as a post-June 1st cut saves you $13 million in cap, and cutting Hunter Renfrow, $8.2 million in cap savings. It talks about trading him. He doesn't really seem to have a place on this team with the addition of Jacoby Myers, who sort of took all of his types of snaps and just a bigger version at this point. I think Hunter Renfrow can have success on another team, but him being that undersized white slot receiver does put him at a bit of a disadvantage. I could see, Jim Harbaugh especially getting him out and then them focusing on getting another wide receiver maybe in the draft on that day 2 with that third round pick that they have. I think that's a real possibility there. But with all those moves, acquiring Jonathan Allen, re-signing your players, I actually found a way to give them more cap space, $65.6 million in cap space to spend in this offseason, and they got some needs that they need to address. There is the quarterback position. There's a wide receiver position. There's the nose tackle spot, sort of mix in there with Jonathan Allen. There's linebacker, and then there's just getting guys in that play defensive back. Help in that pass coverage. Those pass games are going to get more and more competitive against these offenses. A healthy Justin Herbert with a different coach, I think, could be very, very, very dangerous. Patrick Mahomes, you got to expect them to bounce back, figure out what's wrong, and then be great there. And then Sean Payton getting the quarterback that he specifically wants with the type of system he's specifically running, you can recreate that New Orleans Saints pass attack. So you need to worry about getting some of that coverage help as well. I think you've done a good job with Max Crosby and Tyree Wilson. I think that's a good 1-2 punch off the edge. Certainly, and Tyree Wilson's got some versatility to also play to bump on the inside on some passing down. So I think Tyree Wilson and Jonathan Allen, you acquire that. That's a good little interior group for those third downs. But you just need a pure edge rusher that I think are easy to get in free agency for relatively cheap. But these are the two big free agency signings that I got them going out and doing. It starts with linebacker Patrick Queen coming from Baltimore. 4 years, $60 million, $26 million bonus. I believe that is mimicking the Tremaine Edmonds contract from last year with the Bears. Patrick Queen coming off his best season as a pro by my estimation, really grading out well in all aspects of the game, but they did draft a replacement for him. They did give big money to Roquan Smith, so they're not going to give big money to two off-ball linebackers. It's just not the case. They drafted Trenton Simpson for a reason, and they'll probably draft another inside linebacker as a depth piece as well, because that's how Baltimore is. They're really great at drafting a year or two in advance. But I think Patrick Queen can come in and be the Mike linebacker on this team, be a true number one linebacker. I think his improvements on first and second down are really going to help him in this market. And I think a weak free agency market at that position, someone's going to get paid and it'll be him because he's got the age on his side and everything that Bobby Wagner just doesn't. And then there's cornerback Jalen Johnson of the Chicago Bears. I mimicked the Trevon Diggs contract here, 5-year, $97 million, $27 million signing bonus. Again, how they structure these two big contracts in terms of where the cap hits happen, void years, all that stuff, difficult to predict. But Jalen Johnson, coming off his best season as a pro, probably his best season since his rookie year, to be honest, where he really had a great rookie year. And this is a guy that the Raider fans were screaming for them to draft when they took that other Ohio State guy who got arrested. What was his name? Damon Arnett. The same draft. So they wanted, fans were screaming for Jalen Johnson. They could have gotten him, and now they're getting him at a hefty price tag. But he's coming off his best year. There's talks about him wanting to get traded, and if Eberflus is going to stick around, I doubt he wants to come back to the Bears. If the coach he didn't want to play for midway through the season is still going to be there, unless he can be convinced, but I doubt it. Big time contract. He's probably going, out of all the projected non-quarterback free agents, he's probably the one that's going to get the biggest contract from the looks of it in terms of switching teams. There could be, Josh Allen, the edge rusher, might sneak his way in there depending on what happens, but Jalen Johnson is really, I think, set up right now to be the number one free agent, barring somebody miraculous getting cut. And he'll take advantage of it. I think the Raiders will love to bring him in. You got Nate Hobbs out there, and they have Jack Jones. So you have Jalen Johnson and Jack Jones on the outside, and you put Nate Hobbs in the slot. Amik Robertson comes in for some reps as well, and you got a good cornerback group there moving forward. And then Patrick Queen, of course, his ability in the passing game as well, uses his athleticism to your advantage there. I think this is two really good signings for them. And it still leaves them with $25.7 million in cap space, to use to fill out the roster. You can probably get another one or two middle of the pack. You can probably find a nose tackle in this, a pretty good one. Straight up nose tackles don't really go for a lot because of their inability to play on third down. I think you have the ability to have a good interior rush, like I said before. But still, Raiders are in a great spot. And I think that's why this job is probably going to be so desirable and why a guy like Jim Harbaugh would probably take it. Yeah, it's looking great. It's looking good cap-wise for sure. So here is the draft strategy. We talked about trade your second-round pick for Jonathan Allen. Go and get a top-quality player to add to that defense. You're in every position to be able to do that. And I think, again, being aggressive like that will be encouraging to some of the star players like a Devontae Adams and a Max Crosby. But number one is go get your quarterback. And try not to reach for J.J. McCarthy if you can help it. If it is Harbaugh, the chances of it being J.J. McCarthy over a Michael Penix, over a Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, I think is very high. If it was between Drake May, Caleb Williams, and J.J. McCarthy, I think McCarthy would be third on that list, even by Jim Harbaugh's standards. But I think once you get to that second wave of quarterbacks, I think he would just take the guy that he is most familiar with, continue to feel like he can develop him, and a guy that would immediately know the Harbaugh offense and be able to run it right out the gate, which is a huge advantage for a rookie quarterback to have that you just don't see come along all that often. I would like to see them maybe trade back a bit. I think they can get away with doing that. Trade back with a team that might want to come up to get someone like J.C. Latham, who might fall a little bit, to get one of the top edge rushers. That might be taking a bit of a tumble. I think that you can get away with doing that. Then in the third round, grab another wide receiver. I think that in the first 2 days of the draft, you should come away with your quarterback. You could come away with Jonathan Allen, and then you can come away with another wide receiver to just round out this offense in general. And you have that extra cap space that maybe you want to bring back Josh Jacobs. I don't know. Maybe you figure out a way to get an extra third-round pick, and you find a way to get Blake Corum from Michigan as well. I think Jim Harbaugh would love to just do that. Bring his top two guys, McCarthy and Blake Corum, to the Raiders with him. And then on day 3, I would focus on the run defense and the offensive line depth. Your offensive line definitely overachieved with guys like Van Roten and that having career years, but you did lose the offensive line coach. So maybe in an anticipation of perhaps taking a little bit of a step back on the offensive line and not really having guys in free agency as it stands right now that could immediately be an improvement to it, maybe prepare for that. Try to get some guys on that in day 3. On the offensive line, those diamonds in the rough, those Michael Owenu's, those City Sows that sort of find their way under the radar and then become pretty good pros. And then the run defense, of course, as well. Focus on that. If you can get that run defense sorted out with some really good depth, a really good interior rotation, it can take you a long way, especially in this division that's not necessarily shaped to be great against the run. So if you can not allow this division that isn't necessarily great against the run to run all over you, it does allow you to make the investments on the back end more consciously and really focus on stopping the great quarterbacks and the great passing attacks that you're anticipating you're going to face. But yeah, I think that's the best way to sort of go about all this. Let Jim Harbaugh sort of eat on those day 1, day 2s, and then use day 3 to fill out that roster and really solidify it and smooth out some of the sharp edges that you might have. So there it is, my offseason predictions for the Las Vegas Raiders. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And leave your thoughts in the comment section, of course, of what you think of what I did. I feel like the Raiders are set to have one of the more exciting off seasons. Free agency, I think, favors their needs. And I just think that the draft is really going to be dependent on who their head coach is. And you saw what I did there with Harbaugh and J.J. McCarthy. You probably see it in my previous mock draft as well, where I basically predicted that Harbaugh would be the coach here. And J.J. McCarthy would be heavily reached for. Maybe they can trade down a bit and still get him. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, but I'll see you guys next time with the next video in this series. Enjoy playoff football next time.